Hi, so in this video, you'll learn how to use bubble charts to plot three different variables onto the same plot. So bubble charts are a subset of scatter plots. So scatter plots you're probably used to, where you're plotting two continuous variables on the X and Y axis and looking for a pattern. The bubble chart just allows you to put one more variable on that chart in the form of the size of the data points. So here we're taking a look at data that was describing different crops, how irrigation affected their yield, currently what amount of the harvested acreage was irrigated, and then the number of farms associated with each crop type. And what we're trying to understand is the relationship between what crops have the most reliance on irrigation. Are those crops currently irrigated? And then how many farms would that affect? And the way we did this was by plotting the percentage of acres irrigated on the x-axis, the change in yield on the y-axis, and then the number of farms that it's affecting in the size of these dots. And we've also taken it one step further and done some conditional formatting to make this really nice plot for you. And what I mean by that is I have certain thresholds to indicate what a target crop is versus a low interest crop based on the change in yield and the amount of crops that are already irrigated, or amount of acres that are already irrigated for that crop. So for example, we could change the yield threshold to be a lot lower. So say we only want it to be 25% now, and we'll get more crops popping up as being target crops. So namely, we get this sorghum grain, which is also grown on a lot of different farms, as indicated by the size of the circle. We could also change the irrigation threshold, something maybe like 0.3 or 0.4, and lower the irrigation threshold even more. And we can start to see all the different crops that start to pop up as target crops based on those thresholds. So now that I've showed you what the output looks like, how do you do this? I'm going to switch over to this demo sheet here, and it is actually really simple. It's not really much harder than doing a scatter plot. The only difference on how it's going to be a little bit more challenging is getting that conditional formatting. So again, these are the columns that we have been plotting. So the first one in column B is the percent change in yield from the irrigated to the non-irrigated crops. Column C is the percentage of irrigated acres for that crop. And then D is the total number of farms that have reported growing that crop. So to incorporate these yield thresholds and irrigation thresholds, you can just set some cells to be those values. And then you can come in here and do some conditional formatting. So we're going to use an if statement. So the if statement follows the structure of some sort of logical test to either pass or fail, a value to return if it does pass, and a value to return if the test fails. So here we're also going to use an AND logic because we want the target crops to pass both of these thresholds. So the first one's going to be the impact of irrigation, and we want that to have a bigger than 50% impact. And then we're going to go ahead and lock this column in using $signs so that the reference to this column will stay the same when we drag this formula down. Then we enter the second condition, and we want this to be less than our threshold. So that's J3. And then that's the end of our conditional statement. And then we want to put the value to return if true, and we're just going to do the percent change in yield. And then if it's false, I just want to give it an A. And that's because this will allow the plotting function to ignore that data point and only plot the ones that satisfy these conditions. So go ahead and drag this all the way down, and we get about 5 crops that satisfy both of these threshold values. So now we can do the other one. So this is going to be an OR statement because it just needs to fail one of these. So we're going to do this. Close the parentheses with the return value, and then the return value of this bus. There we go. And there you go, the exact opposite of the line below. And just a side note, I'm not going to remove these here, but if you probably should, because these are returning values of 0, even though we're just missing the data. And now we can get into plotting. So super simple. Go and insert your plot as you would normally. We're going to tell it what data to select and name the series. So top interest graphs, plot the irrigation acreage, plot the target crop yield, and then the number of farms as the size. And then we can do the low interest crops. And same thing, x-axis is the same. The y-axis is different in that we're selecting the target graph or the non-target graphs, and then sizes. Great, press OK, and then there's your chart. And there are a lot of things you can do to clean it up, but the one thing I want to show you how to do is add data labels for the names of the crops. So this is relatively simple here, and if we only want to do it for the ones we're interested in, click on that series, add your chart data labels, I'll do above. And then if you click on these and you go to your text options and label options, you can enter a value from cells, and this is where you can tell it to give it the crop names. And you can remove the stuff that you don't want. And now we know which are our target crops, which were all these different root varieties. And then if you want to get these back into percentages, you can select these and go to your format cell percentage. And there you go. And then you can recolor everything to how you want it to be and get all those labels. But now you can go in here and change your thresholds and 2 and 1, and you can see which ones are crops that are most impacted by irrigation, and if they're having only partial or only a small fraction of their crops currently being irrigated. And yeah, that's a really easy way to try to get a better feel for how different factors impact your selection of different selection of different recommendations in terms of outcomes, and also just shows you another way to plot things in, which can be helpful for not only this sort of analysis, but if you're making perceptual maps and you wanted to plot to maybe not necessarily continuous variables, but hierarchical variables, and then some sort of third variable in terms of point size. These plots can be really helpful, and it is a lot less painful than doing it by hand. All right.